Podcast guests. If you've got an interview show, you know you need them. But how do you get the really big name guests that are going to keep your audience glued to your show? Well, strap in, because I've got the surefire way to give you the confidence you need to approach any guest for your show. Hey there, I'm Brian Kind. I'm a podcaster and video designer here with Libsyn, and this channel is all about helping you stay up to date with the tips, tricks, and strategies to help you grow your show and influence within the space. If you want to stay up to date with everything going on here at Libsyn, one of the largest podcast hosts and distribution platforms out there, do me a favor, click that like and subscribe button so that you never miss a video. I think it's safe to say that as podcasters, we love to talk. It's literally what we do. We'll talk about anything, any subject for hours upon end, as long as we're interested in it. However, one thing that seems to make us all clam up is the idea of reaching out to guests to get them on our show. There's a lot of apprehension and anxiety associated with reaching out of our comfort zone and contacting guests that we've never talked to before. Maybe you might be thinking, this guest is too big for my show. Why would they want to come on anyway? Or maybe you do reach out and you hear this. I'm here to tell you not to worry. With the tried and true technique of reaching out to guests, your podcast, regardless of its size, can definitely reach out to guests that have that massive name recognition that you know is going to help grow your influence and authority within your chosen niche. In this video, I'm going to walk you through my process in researching, contacting, and ultimately booking your podcast guests. The best part is that this process will cost you nothing and require only that you devote some time and some sweat equity. This might seem like a no-brainer, but before you actually contact a guest, you should figure out who you want to contact and ask yourself why they might be a good guest for your podcast. One thing I suggest doing is that you create a comprehensive list of all the potential guests that could be on your show that fit within your podcast's niche. Look at these guests and ask yourself an honest question. What will having these guests on my show bring to my audience that they're not currently getting? Are there stories, are there experiences that each of these guests have that my audience would absolutely love to hear? Once you've identified the guests that you want to bring on your show, do the hard work and actually figure out the contact information for each particular guest. You don't have to look hard. Look into social media. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn will have contact information at the ready. If they have a personal website, often in the contact section, there'll be information there. Now, for high-profile guests, they may actually have third-party representation. These are agents that you typically have to go through just to go ahead and get that email or that contact with that particular guest. With that said, it's important to say that you keep track of not only the contact information, but the progress that you have in that comprehensive list. Update it often so you never lose track of where you stand with a particular guest. It may sound old-fashioned in the age of DMs, but email is still your best bet when trying to initiate what is referred to as the cold call. So let's break down my process for initiating the perfect cold call email. Introduce yourself. The first few sentences should do the work of introducing yourself and your podcast. Be sure to include any relevant links to either yourself or your podcast so that your guests can learn more about you. For an added bonus, try to include something in these first few sentences that communicates to your potential guest something that they've done recently. For example, maybe your guest was on another podcast recently and you listened to it and loved what they said. Try to pull some remark from that experience and list it in here. It could be something as simple as just saying, I loved what you said about this particular subject. The point is that doing this sort of thing helps communicate to your potential guests that you're not just trying to fill a calendar, but that you're actively engaged with what that guest says and does, and you want to bring it to your podcast and your audience. The ask. Always be direct. At this point in the email, clearly lay out your intention of bringing this potential guest on for an interview. Define exactly what this interview will entail, the date and time, the location, if you have a set location, if they're in person, or if you're going to do this thing virtually, and ultimately where you intend to publish this interview after the fact. The point is you want your guest to feel comfortable in knowing all the details of this potential interview. Now I'm going to let you in on a little secret, and this is honestly one of the key principles to getting you any guests that you want. This tip is something that I don't think a lot of people really focus on when they are approaching guests for their show. And the tip is this: present your ask in terms of what value your guest is going to get out of being part of your show. And it has to be beyond just, I'll share your links on social. Okay, it has to be beyond that. And when I'm talking about value, that value is ultimately what is it that the guest is going to get out of sparing their time to be on your show. So this is ultimately where your research has come into play, as hopefully you know exactly what your potential guest is working on currently, so that ultimately you can say, hey, being on my show will allow you a platform for you to discuss your work and publicize it to my audience. That is honestly the secret. It's that you know that your audience is going to connect with your guest, and you want to offer that up to your guest so that they can publicize whatever it is that they may be working on. Closer and follow-up. At this point in the email, thank your guest, thank them for their time, thank them for their consideration, and be sure to include all relevant contact information. This may include your email, your phone number, your website. The point is you want to give your guest every opportunity to get back to you. Give it some time. People have a lot of things going on in their lives. They might be on vacation, they might be on a business meeting, they might be just doing something else, and they can't get back to your email as quickly as you might like. So I suggest giving about 5 to 7 days of time between your first contact and your follow-up. Now, when you send that follow-up email, because you should send a follow-up email, make it very brief, maybe a sentence or two, just checking in to make sure that they're okay, and just that you reiterate that, hey, I'd like to interview you. And I would suggest maybe trying to get them off of email at this point, suggest maybe doing a phone call. That way it can alleviate some of their concerns and just give you a more natural way of discussing your intentions rather than trading a bunch of emails back and forth. Now, aside from the cold email, how else can we contact potential guests? Social media. Now, while I did say that I personally prefer emails over DMs, that's not to say that you can't use potential guest social media accounts to engage with them. One thing I would suggest, though, is that if you are going to initiate an interview over social media, that you try to engage with them before you even make the ask. This could be things like just commenting on their posts, commenting on their tweets, retweeting things. You want to really show that guest that you're not just trying to contact them for an interview just out of the blue. You want to be part of that particular potential guest audience first. Third-party agents. If you were to Google podcast guests right now, more than likely you're going to find a list of websites that are designed with the express purpose of using an algorithm to match you, the podcaster, with a potential guest within their system. Sites like Podmatch and Matchmaker.fm are fantastic resources to use if you're really looking to test the waters with booking potential podcast guests. While not every guest that you find on these sites is within your niche, it's important to bring up that the one benefit I like to see with these sites is that the guests listed on here are clearly competent and professional in knowing how to work with podcasts directly. They know how to answer questions. They know how to really give you the sound bites and stories that are really going to resonate with your audience. And that's really where I find the value in these types of sites. PR agencies. This last one here is a bit more niche to entertainment-focused podcasts. Now, I have a little bit of experience in this, as my podcast, The Cinema Psycho Show, is a movie review podcast. And one of the things over the course of our 240 episodes that we've had the pleasure of seeing is that we get a lot of emails from these outside PR agencies that are working with independent movie studios. These companies, in essence, send us emails almost on a weekly basis that include a lot of links to independent films that we could potentially review, but also interviews with the cast, crew, and even directors sometimes of these independent projects. So one thing I suggest is, depending on what your niche is, look for the PR agencies that might cater to that niche and try to get your podcast on a mailing list for contact information, just so that if in the event that a PR agency is putting out some sort of release talking about a particular topic, that you'll be in the know in how to reach out to them and get that interview. Before I get into my final tip, let us know down in the comments, what is your workflow for contacting your guests for your podcast? What things have you had to overcome to really nail that perfect guest? Contacting and booking a perfect guest can be a challenge, but with practice, determination, and a method in place, you can easily get over the anxiety and get that guest that you know is going to bring awesome stories that are really going to resonate with your audience. That being said, there are a couple key points that I want you to keep in mind. Number one, never, ever, ever pay for a guest. If a guest asks for payment, honestly, they're not the right guest for you. Number two, don't feel that you have to share your download numbers with a potential guest. Sometimes guests may ask for this, but ultimately it's going to give you the feeling that maybe that guest really isn't into the idea of being on your show, and that really they just want to be on your show only if it's big enough. Number three, always, always, always have your guests sign a release ahead of the interview. A release is really just a document that's going to lay out exactly how you intend to use their interview and the scope of that interview, and any protections legally that need to be applied to yourself and your interviewee. In fact, I'm going to include in the description of this video a really awesome release template that you can use today from Gordon Firemark. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to check the link in the description, as I've included a really awesome email template that you can use when crafting your cold call emails to your potential guests. As I mentioned, I also included a link to that Gordon Firemark podcast guest release that you can use for your show. And speaking of podcast guests, check the video up here, as I did a recent breakdown of the best ways that you can remote record your podcast guests. You definitely don't want to miss out on that. I'm Brian Coddington with Libsyn, and remember, keep podcasting.